Hello and welcome to another episode of Before the Box. I'm your host, Jen, and today my guest is...
Hey, I'm John de Champos. I am the owner of Terrible Games, a brand new publishing company that is bringing our flagship and introductory product, Token Terror's Battlegrounds, to Kickstarter on July 21st.
And you said you had other positions in the industry as well?
Oh yeah, so I co-designed Token Terror's Battlegrounds, and actually since getting into the tabletop game design realm, I've actually designed a couple other ones because I've been having a ton of fun doing it. So we have a couple other things that we're working on in the background, and then I'm also because I did all the illustration for Token Terrors. People saw that my illustration background, which I'd been doing professionally for about 5 years now, was applicable to the board game world. So I've actually been doing some board game illustration for other companies that are not mine. And yeah, so co-designer, illustrator, and publisher, I guess.
Awesome. So I'll get straight into our questions. So what was your first board gaming experience?
Oh my gosh. I have to actually think about that. I mean, from the gut, I want to say it had to probably be like Uno or Monopoly. Like when I was a kid, really like, and I think a lot of designers had this moment. In the early days before the hobby really started to evolve and sort of turn into what the modern hobby is now. I remember playing Catan for the first time in like 2005 or something like that, maybe 2004, and really like being like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah, but yeah, I think my first one, it was unmemorable is what it is mostly.
So did you have a different career before you dived into the board game industry?
Yeah, I mean, I was a 9 to 5er for most of my adult life. When me and my partner found out we were pregnant, I was making like minimum wage, and getting somebody to watch our kid for us would be more money than I made going to a job 40 hours a week. So I just decided to pivot into doing what I had been wanting to do for a long time, which was become a freelance illustrator and become a stay-at-home dad. And that has since transitioned into a full-time gig where I am both of those things still, but the illustration part has actually turned into something that's doing okay. It's doing pretty good.
So, for newcomers coming into the career, do you have any advice for them to break into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of those pieces of advice. There's just a lot to cover with a question like that. I would say that if you can, try to partner. If you're not already a skilled artist, you should try to partner with somebody who is and bring them in on equity, or split the project proceeds or the project workload with them, just 50-50 down the middle if you can. Unless you have startup money, I've seen, a very big barrier to a lot of independent publishers is that they have to figure out their art budget. Their art budget will eat a ton of money. There's a whole process of acquiring a freelance artist and figuring out best business practices to negotiate with them and figuring out how to speak with them and communicate effectively. It's a whole thing, and I'm on both sides of it. I've hired artists for projects of mine. I'm in a couple bands here in Baltimore, and sometimes I like to hire artists to do poster designs or T-shirts for us. There's a learning curve to that. So if you are an artist and you're thinking about a good way to sort of take your passion and maybe figure out a way to turn it into a regular gig, I mean, I don't think that going into publishing full time is something that would be an easy journey. I definitely don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I feel like I'm doing it now, but I don't know if it'll actually be a full time job that'll bring in enough money for me to dedicate all my time to it. But yeah, figuring out how you're going to produce the art, because to me, and I think a lot of designers out there, it's one of the surefire ways to sort of say to the world, like, I'm serious. um we understand the industry. Like, going in half cocked with kind of like underwhelming art is not going to get you into the industry, I don't think, at this point, because there's just so many players and a lot of them really do know what's at stake and what it takes to get that game on the shelf. So yeah, the art thing, aside from that, and I said this on another interview a couple months ago, if you're thinking about breaking into the industry for the first time, design a card game and figure out a way to make it cool and original. A card game is much more containable project. That's what some people refer to it as a humble campaign. It's something you can get out the door for under $5,000. You get a really nice art package behind it. Maybe you make some kind of cool packaging. I saw a guy, I can't remember his name, but recently he was making a space themed game where the box looks like a communicator, like a spaceship communicator, and when you open it, it makes like a little sound.
That's awesome.
And it's just it's a card game with some chipboard pieces, and I think a dice, but like that's enough. Like he has enough conceptual oomph for people to maybe turn their head when his game is released, even though it's just a card game, right? There's a ton of card games out there. So yeah, if you can humble campaign something, what that'll do is establish you in the industry. It'll build you a small buyer base that will help you propel your next more important, larger project. So token terrors and terrible games, we skipped that. 2020 hindsight, I have an idea for a card game that I probably could have whipped up in under 6 months, and that would have been cool. But we skipped to the part where we release a game with a ton of miniatures in it, which I think is usually the second or third, maybe fourth kind of release that a lot of publishers tend to lean towards.
So, from your experience, what do you think is the hardest part of your job?
Time management, probably. I'm trying to balance making money doing freelance art still. Like I'm currently working on an art package for a game that's set to release in the fall. That's not mine. While currently in the last 11 days before we hit the launch of my Kickstarter campaign, I have a 5-year-old in the other room watching TV. I have to make dinner, go to the grocery store, and then try to maintain some presence within my life as an individual with like friends and like playing D&D bi-weekly with my buddies on Roll20, or getting together with friends and thankfully having them come on to play Token Terrors on Tabletop Simulator with me and play test rules and stuff. So, and play video games and hang out with my family. Like it's all a big like tornado of things that need to have my attention at different parts of the day.
So at the end of the day, what's one of your favorite moments from your career so far?
I mean, I guess right now, today actually is that day. If I had to say, I received a review of Token Terrors Battlegrounds just dropped on a blog / website for a creator named Cardboard Guru, and this guy totally understood the game. I mean, his critiques of the game were things that like we built in purposefully. Like his main critique was that the introductory factions of the first season didn't really flex the muscles of our combat system well enough. Like they were a little bit too safe, and we actually did it on purpose because we wanted people to be able to understand the mechs. But the rest of the interview is just really glowing, and it's awesome to have a third-party perspective. Look at this thing that we made. His name is Mark, by the way. He took the time to go on to Tabletop Simulator. He played me 3 or 4 times. He beat me twice at my own game, and his perspective on it was like pitch perfect of what we want the general public to understand about Token Terrors, and that really is just like a very profound validation after 3 years of development. If that feels really good.
So, what is the process you go through when you're creating a game or trying to market it to the public?
So making a game is, let's start there, and then provided I don't ramble too much, I'll try to remember that we need to move to the marketing discussion. So, okay, so making a game, what I like to do is start with theme. I think that's the best way to go because theme drives so many things as far as your mechanics go. I can speak to, like in Token Terrors, we're working on a new mechanism called a Terrible Tactics card, where you're actually able to build synergy between 2 different factions, and there's also like a shared history on one side of the card that tells a story about why they are teamed up. And I got into I got into a discussion with another creator, a friend of mine named Chris Stone, who's also a designer, about what's the thematic rub of this mechanism where when an elf kills another enemy, the zombies automatically move 1 space towards that enemy because something just died and they're going to go eat it? Or are we leaning more towards the mechanism of the zombies having group mobility? Because that's actually what this mech is supposed to do. It's supposed to give them something you don't already have. So, where's the rubber meet the road? Are we going to lean towards mech? Are we going to lean towards story and lore? And yeah, I think making gut decisions about how mechanisms work in relation to how much theme you want to let invade that part of the game design is kind of where I approach things. So yeah, I start with theme. So we'll take a game that I've been working on actually called Destroy the Castle. Here's the basic process. No joke, not to be gross. I was sitting on the toilet looking at Kickstarter campaigns. I saw some dice, and for whatever reason, I had this vision of dice being built up into a pyramid style shape, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah. Like I'm always taking my Catan pieces and like building them into robots and like taking dice and like stacking them up and doing weird stuff. There should be like a cool like tower defense or something kind of game where you build dice into a castle shape. And 2 months later, I'm sitting playing with my co-designer Lucas Gerace. Playing, we're finishing up a playtest of Token Terrors, and I'm like, he's like, "What are you gonna do after Token Terrors? Like, what happens after that?" And I was like, "Well, I've been kicking around this idea for blah 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 blah." And within an hour, we just like boom boom boom, and we thought of the whole game. And it's like you're a Castlan ruler who's trying to outbuild and out treasure your opponent, and it's a dexterity battle game, resource management. Like it does all this stuff, but it's like one point of inspiration sort of led this whole thematic through line and also inform the mechanics so that now we have like this game that we got excited about and we just rode that momentum until we had something that felt like it was playable. And once we had that, like literally the next morning, I was so excited that I did some preliminary measurements, made prototype pieces of the board, and I made some screens for the Castlan rulers because the dice are bouncing all over the place, so you have to trap them in. Um, and started writing up a rule booklet. I called Lucas that night and I was like, hey man, I have like a prototype ready. And he was like, cool, I'll come over. We tried it out. We got really excited. We refined the rules. And now like the game basically, like if Token Terrors wasn't happening, I could probably do a Kickstarter for Destroy the Castle in like 2 months. It's like ready to go.
Awesome.
And then that leads to your other question, which is the marketing side. So saying that I could launch that game in 2 months is actually not true because the first thing you need to do is build up a huge audience and a tribe around your game or your brand. So Token Terrorist has like some challenges there because we have sort of a multi-pronged marketing problem. Educating your backers or educating your possible customers is something that you need to be able to do like quickly. And with us, we're trying to send them, I think it's just tough for us to convey the amount of information that we want to because Token Terrors is a new game. It's an enhanced substitute for 1/1 token creatures in Magic the Gathering, and they make inexpensive, durable RPG minions as well. So we can't like it's just tough for us to like shotgun blast that at everybody at once. So we've just been leaning on the fact that it's a new game. And with Destroy the Castle or any game that we release after Token Terrors, there's going to be some lead time where we just have to educate people about what it is, build the hype. You want to start dabbling into the creator community. If you're thinking about getting into publishing, like go onto Facebook or Reddit or whatever your social media outlet is and start finding that creator community and start pinging ideas off of them. Don't just post progress pictures and saying I made a game. You need to ask questions. You need to look for feedback. You can find playtesters that way. You can find, I've formed a bunch of meaningful relationships with other designers like Wes Woodbury and Eric Geller, and the list goes on. Ben Moy. There's all these people that I've met through Facebook that have been influential in getting Token Terrace to where it is now. And all the while I'm working on my game and posting updates and getting feedback and all this other stuff, I'm also building that tribe, showing people that I'm ready to deliver, I'm executing, I'm listening to feedback. They're getting excited. They'll signal boost your game once you go live. They'll help you out with stuff like get your tabletop simulator game figured out. I mean, the list to the benefits of this goes on and on and on. But if you're getting into publishing, plant your feet firmly into that creator community and stay there and share your progress and build your game with them.
So, is there any part of a particular project you would have worked differently at this point versus where you're at right now?
Yeah. The biggest mistake I made with Token Terrors is that I tried to source miniature production in the United States. We lost a bunch of money trying to do that. It didn't get us anything. And I wish that step one is as soon as I realized we were rock solid on moving on this game, I should have just started getting our STL files transferred over to Chinese manufacturers and seeing what the numbers were like, because it's just not financially possible to produce miniatures in the United States, period.
Is it because of price ranges, or is it because there isn't an actual like manufacturer in the United States for that kind of product?
The manufacturers that I spoke with, so I went to a trade show and met with a bunch of people. In the way that we lost money, I actually I spoke with and brokered a deal with a US based like boutique injection molder who does like small runs and stuff and runs his own small shop. And he quoted us X amount of money for X amount of miniatures, and it just didn't pan out. But I talked to trade show people, and they were like, "Look, if your minimum order is under 100,000 pieces, you don't matter to us. Like our manufacturing concern is for like a specially designed washer bracket system for a boat engine, and we need to make hundreds of thousands of them, not 100 or 1,000. Because the setup time by itself is a whole thing. The molding costs, ordering the steel, getting that all tooled, it's expensive. And the reason that it's not possible in the United States isn't just because of the common business practices of the injection molding industry here, which there are probably or almost certainly caveats to that, right? There's got to be people who are doing small scale injection molding. A lot of toy makers that you'll see on like Instagram or maybe even Facebook who are doing boutique toy design, what they're doing is like vacuum sealed silicon molding. So that stuff is very containable. We actually looked at doing that also, and it also was cost prohibitive. But in China, they already have the workflow, the equipment, the engineering oomph, everything about their infrastructure to bring your idea from a rendered 3-dimensional STL file to a physical piece of plastic in your hand is already massively streamlined. It's they've done it for so long already that when you send it to them, yes, the prices are shockingly lower than you would find in the United States. I'm talking about, roughly $1.12 per miniature here to $6 for like 50 cents in China.
Wow. That's a lot, especially depending on how many miniatures are in your game too.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that what we tried to do is as far as price efficiency and also passing off a lot of value to our backers and to the people who play our game is that, yeah, you're getting, if we fund in the first 48 hours, you're actually going to get 42 miniatures. But if we just the flat offer for $45 is 36 minis because you get 6 of each faction. So our setup costs for that family of molds is a little bit lower than you might see for a miniatures game where every single miniature is different. Because we're only doing 6 molds, and they're gonna gate off 5 of them while they run one, and then after they get the quantities they need of that one injected in X color, they're gonna gate off the other ones and do the next one. So they're only gonna make a 2-plate mold, as opposed to if you look at something like Zombicide where there's a bajillion different miniature sculpts. The setup cost for that is a lot higher because they have to do an individual mold for every single one. And ours, yeah, you're getting 36 minis, but it's 6 of each mold.
No, makes sense. And this is something I'm very interested in because I'm a miniature player. I love games with miniatures. CMON is my addiction at this point because I get anything from them. But one of the things I find in Canada, especially too, is I don't hear people talking about manufacturing within Canada for molds and that kind of thing. And I'm like, is it just because we don't have it? Or is it just because it's cheaper to go somewhere else? And from what you're saying, it sounds like it's just the cost is so much cheaper somewhere else versus doing it in-house in country.
Well, yeah, but I think the headline isn't so much that China is just cheaper because they're cheaper. They're cheaper because they already have business models and infrastructure and workflow that are set up around this concern.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's not that it's cheaper. It's just that they have everything already done, and they've been doing it for so long too, like you were saying. So, can you take us through a day in the life of your career right now?
Yeah. I wake up at 8:00. I wash my face, go get coffee, come upstairs. This is my cup of coffee. I fill this. You can see it next to my head. I fill this up. And then I will look at my notebook on my desk, whatever's jotted down here. I review it. There's stuff that I have to do on it. I pop onto Facebook. I start posting about a couple things. I pop on Instagram. I maybe make a post there just to get some preliminary social media just off my plate. Then I will check my emails and answer some of those. Then start tackling what's on the notebook. I'll right around 10:00. I'll stop doing stuff that's like just me at the keyboard, and I'll fire up my tablet, which is right here on my desk, and I'll start working on whatever art stuff I need to do. You can see behind me, I actually have a whiteboard that has objectives on it. I stay at my desk until 1:30 or 2. Then I go downstairs and eat lunch. Then I come back up and I work some more. Usually I work from 3 until about 5:30 or 6. Then I go downstairs and make dinner, eat dinner with the family. If it's my turn for bedtime duty, I put my daughter to bed. I'm usually done with that by 8:30 at the latest. Then I usually chill on the couch with my partner for maybe an hour and a half or 2, stay down there until 11 or midnight. Then she goes to bed. Then I come upstairs and work some more. I usually get to bed between 1:30 and 3 o'clock.
That's intense.
This is right now. This is 11 days away from launch. I don't know if that would be typical every other day, but right now that's what it's about.
So, when you go through playtesting, does a lot change from the original concept of the game, or do you tend to stick to like pretty much the core concept that you started with?
Yes. At least with a game like Token Terrors, the answer is absolutely, because we weren't really just making a game, we were making a system, right? So we were trying to design a core set of rules that would be able to be molded and twisted around in different ways for the foreseeable future. So, we want to keep doing expansions of Token Terrors indefinitely. So what we're doing is just taking the system through the paces. And I mean, at the proto version 1 of Token Terrors, we had a power and toughness rating. So it was 2 numbers, just like Magic the Gathering. We were doing this weird thing called the rally step, where you were leaving things exhausted and they didn't turn around until after you've used everybody once, which wasn't very good. It was really clunky. The rule sets for the factions have gone under the microscope like so many times. Like I can't even remember what the initial faction abilities were because they've changed around so much. So yeah, the version that people will be playing when they get their copies after the Kickstarter, fingers crossed, is like the 10th or 11th iteration of Token Terrors. Destroy the Castle, though, knocked it out in 2 days. So, I think with Token Terrors also, from an experience standpoint, it was kind of a whipping horse for us, or at least for me, like getting my brain equipped and like accustomed to doing game design. Mm-hmm. Just iterating, playtesting the hell out of it, keep coming back. Being able to let go of things also is a huge thing that you have to learn how to deal with. And yeah, once I had been doing that for about a year, working on new games now, it just seems like second nature almost. It's a lot easier, at least.
So on average, how long does it take you from taking the idea for a game to actually getting it to a box or a prototype?
Well, because I can do my own artwork, I wish I had something in hand's reach that I could show you. I got so excited about Destroy the Castle that I made the castle and ruler screens with full colored artwork over a weekend. I designed the board on my tablet and sent it off to a one-off company in China to make 3 neoprene mats. They exist. So that one is maybe anomalous. I think it really depends on the game, to answer your question honestly. Like, I'm working on another game right now with my partner called, the working title is Kyodai na Robato, which is a co-op exploration and resource management game where each of you are like a different robot production company, a giant robot company, and a kaiju comes out of the water, and it has a set track that you roll and move the monster with monster cards that do slashes and blasts. And the whole time you're sending scouts out into the city to search these wooden cube skyscrapers that you flip over that tells you how many resources you draw at random, and you use the resources to build robot parts and stop the monster before it gets to the nuclear core in the center of the city.
That sounds amazing. By the way, I am so down to play test that whenever you need help with that. Anything to do with monster, especially like Kaiju Monsters, I am such a huge fan.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that is fun about that game is that there's actually a tile system for the robot parts. So those all go into a bag. So you can hack the net. It's a worker placement game at its core. So you have five workers, and you can use a worker to hack the net and draw 3 robot schematic tiles at random. The tiles are hexagonal, they're 1 inch by 1 inch hexagonal tiles, and you can actually mix and match the different schematics to build different robots. And then once you complete a robot, you use workers to pilot it, and then it can enter the city and do stuff to the monster to stop it from getting to the nuclear core. But that game, unlike Destroy the Castle, which was basically functional after, in under a week almost, that game has been undergoing nearly weekly playtests with her and I. It's supposed to be a 4-player game. We're playing the 2-person co-op, so that doesn't really help. But we've been still iterating and building on it. And with Token Terrors, there was literally a solid year and a half of us just working out how the mechanics work, because it's a system as opposed to a one-off game. Mm-hmm. And then, the card game I mentioned earlier, I typed that out while hanging out at the park while my kid was playing. And then I did that a second time, and I had something that seems on its face to be something that will mostly work. It needs to be played, but it looks like it'll mostly work. So it's like, it kind of depends on the game. Something like Kyoto no Roboto, there's so much economy and math that comes into making that game truly balanced or somewhat balanced that, like, it's just going to take a while. And I think Token Terror is kind of the same way. But something like Destroy the Castle, which is a bunch of dice rolling and a dexterity battle game, like, it didn't take super long to do because there isn't all these variables that will affect whether or not your game is actually good. It depends on what you have going on.
So from a designer standpoint, what's more important to you, story or mechanics?
Mechanics. And you can make a semi-abstract game that's just mechanics and have it be good. I mean, Token Terrors is sort of that a little bit, but we do have a lot of story in there. I mean, I'm also a D&D player, and I also really love Magic, and part of the reason I love Magic is because of the world that it exists in. I like opening, I mean, obviously for other reasons, I like opening a pack and having a Planeswalker in there because they're usually mythic rares. But okay. But like the other day I opened it up, I was like, yes, I got the Garrick Planeswalker card in the new core set 2020. That was cool. I like that. My favorite card in Magic is Raging Goblin. He's a 1/1 with haste. Why do I like him? His flavor text is awesome. He's not a big player in the game, but he's a cool character.
So where do you find your inspirations for your games or for your designs?
I mean, Magic the Gathering directly inspired Token Terrors, like, pretty much completely, because I'm a big fan of using a mechanism in Magic where you generate a bunch of little chaff blockers called token creatures. They usually have a power and toughness of 1, and you'll have like a card that has an enter the battlefield effect where it's like, when this human soldier enters the battlefield, generate 2 1/1 soldier token creatures, right? And then what I'll do is I'll play this mono white token generation deck where pretty much my first 4 turns is just generating a bunch of 1/1s, and then by the time I turn around to turn 5 or 6, I'm holding on to all these enchantments and instants that are going to boost every creature I control or give a +1/+1 to every human on the battlefield, and then I just send them all at once. And they can't really do anything because by turn 5 or 6, if they're playing a green or blue deck, if they're not playing red, they probably don't have enough blockers to stop me. So I'm doing that, and I'm looking at the implementation of token cards in Magic, and nobody ever has them around. People are using dice and beads and paper clips and whatever, fill in the blank. And I'm like, why isn't there a cooler, more fun solution to this? There should be little dice-shaped guys that you can use for 1/1 creatures so that when you generate a giant, army, you actually have an army on the table. Like, that would be cool. And that's how we created Token Terrors. Like, we made all the miniatures and did the miniature designs before the game even existed at all, just to be used in Magic.
So what kind of software do you use when you're designing games?
I just recently switched to a tablet that uses Procreate on the iPad for doing art. It's just a lot better than using pencil and paper, which 90% of the art package for Token Terrors was done with traditional media. Like, I would draw on a piece of Bristol board and actually ink it with real pens and then scan it and color it in and all that stuff. My partner, Tim Brocious, actually, the power of the internet, let me tell you, the moment I had the idea for Token Terrors and thought about pursuing it seriously, I just went to Facebook and was like, do I know anyone who can model in ZBrush? And Tim messaged me and was like, yeah, I can do that. So he is now a member of my company. He owns a part of it. And we've been working together for 3 years. And yeah, he does everything in ZBrush. He was using something called, I can't remember what it was, but it's an animation based 3D modeler as opposed to one where you just sculpt in 3D. because he also does animation. Like, the dude's a dynamo. He's doing all of our media production. He's done all of our animation and GIF making. He's done all of our renders, and he worked on 4 of the 6 sculpts in season 1.
Awesome. So what is your biggest challenge when it comes to being a designer?
The crowdsourcing part of it. You know, you can spend a decade kicking around designs for a board game, and they could be absolutely legit, super fun to play, and everybody around you tells you that they are great. And that would be true. That could be completely true. Like, you might have the next biggest game on planet Earth. However, unless you're ready to do the legwork to get it sold to a publisher, which is a totally great thing to try and do if you have an awesome game on your hands, you're going to have to get into self-publishing, which means you're starting a small business. You're not doing a fun project on Kickstarter. You're starting a business where you're going to have to learn how to do online marketing, build up a community around your brand before you go to launch, get email signatures, get people on an email database, start going to public events like playtesting groups, conventions, whatever, fill in the blank. Like, we did like an almost 6-month residency going once a week at a local game space called No Land Beyond, where I would just go and maybe play 1 or 2 people, but I was there every single week. Mm-hmm. And I was giving away T-shirts. I got 30 T-shirts printed and was like, if you come to No Land Beyond on Thursdays and beat me at my own game, I'll give you a T-shirt.
So there's a unique T-shirt out there for people.
Yeah, I mean, you're making print and plays. You're trying to simultaneously learn and implement brand new lessons immediately and try to grow your brand as quickly as possible. So, like, even with us working on this game for 3 years, right now, as of today, we have 406 followers on our Kickstarter preview page, which I'm really proud of. But I saw another first-time creator who is a friggin' legend who had like 1,700 on launch day, and I don't think he ran any ads. I mean, a lot of it's conditional, some of it's happenstance, but the biggest challenge of it, if you're trying to get in, is just figuring out how to do that marketing thing and have people believe in your product and be ready to help you back that project in the first 2 days, ideally in the first 24 hours is what you actually want.
So, when it comes to Kickstarter, I know you're just heading into your campaign at this point, but have you hit any challenges when trying to set up your page and trying to get an audience at this point?
Yeah. So there's a pretty common practice for what you do is you basically finish the Kickstarter page layout. You get your whole story section figured out. You figure out your pledge numbers. You figure out how much money you want. You get a video made. You do everything. The page is done. You're ready to let the public see it. So you give everybody a link to the preview, and then they all start ripping it apart because you've been looking at it for so long that you missed really dumb stuff. Or there's just things that didn't occur to you because you're not, a swath of people who are probably your buyer base. So you have to go in and make some changes. Then you repost it. Repeat that cycle maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe more. If you're me, last week I went in and fixed the Kickstarter feed page 5 times. Where I took down complete graphics packages, took them off, reopened them in my graphic design software, fixed it, put it back up, found another mistake, did that again. And there's gonna be more of that. We have 11 days until launch, and I'm gonna probably end up doing it 2 or 3 more times.
So, do you find that Kickstarter is user friendly when you're trying to put your page together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kickstarter wants you to succeed. It's in their best interest for you to succeed. Hardcore, because they only make money if you make money. You have to fund your project for them to get their fees. So they're there to, if you do something that's worth looking at and has a decent following behind it on day one, where you're able to tap that algorithm and get on Kickstarter's radar because you funded your project in 24 hours or 48 hours, maybe get that project we like thing on there, but yeah, the interface is, totally good. I like that they keep on trying to evolve the platform a little bit. I don't know if you saw, but for a little while they were doing that thing where there was like 3 bulleted blocks of basic information about the project that showed up at the top of the page. The fact that they're doing the preview pages now is huge. I mean, that is a marketing tool for creators, right? I know that there's 406 people as of today who know that the Kickstarter exists, have a Kickstarter account, and on day one they will receive an email that says Token Terrors is live. That's awesome.
So, what would be your advice for people who are starting as a designer into the industry?
I mean, just retouching on a lot of the stuff we've talked about before. Do a campaign that's small. Figure out how to get your art for not a lot of money, because that'll present some stumbling blocks for you if you have to figure out a way to finance art. Stay entrenched in the creator community so you can get good feedback and build your brand at the same time. Figure out the social graces side of social marketing or social media marketing. Prepare your mind to become an actual brand. That's another thing that we didn't really talk about, is like, you know, I sort of got into this before because I was already doing freelance and also doing stuff as a working musician. So you kind of get into this mindset where you're very just not worried about being unabashedly self-interested in promoting your projects, right? But part of that is about being tactful and like posting parallel and figuring out ways to like get around algorithms and social media BS that'll stop your post from getting any traction. I mean, especially now in a COVID world where we're all living on the internet, it's like, you know, you got to find those solutions. But yeah, somebody just breaking in, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I spent a solid year being in a course, like a college class, on how to. It was a self-inflicted, study load of learning how to do all that stuff, learning how to build a Kickstarter page and resource different things that we needed for our game's development, and getting those playtests in, and bringing on a graphic designer. I have 4 people who own a part of this company because I wrote a business proposal. I approached them. To some of them, I said, "Hey, I need your money." To some of them, I said, "I need your money, and I want you to help co-design this game," or "I need you to help us make a video and do sculpts," or "Anytime I call you, will you come over and play test stuff with me?" Or "I need you to do all the layout and graphic design for our rule booklet." These are all people that I looked at their costs because I didn't have it, and they're people that I've worked with who are very dear to me and like family to me, and they are a part of the company. That's how I got around the prohibitive cost part of things. And then also I'm an illustrator, so we have 0 art budget. I just did it.
So, as an illustrator in the industry, is there anything in particular that you found was hard breaking into the industry? Or once you got going and stuff started appearing on social media, on different projects or things like that, did you find it was a lot easier to get contracts? Is there any kind of particular model that you like to use when also pricing as well? Because that's something that's very interesting to me, because you're the first illustrator I've had on here. So it's something that I need to think about for future episodes to ask questions about. But yeah, is there anything along those lines that you can give us information on?
Sure. Every freelance illustrator, I think any freelancer kind of does things differently. I wouldn't say that this is an industry standard by any stretch, but this is the way that I do it. I asked them to send me a brief, which is basically an overview with a list of what the actual workload is going to look like. So in the case of something I'm working on now, which I can't talk about too much, but I will tell you about some of the specifics of like the workload stuff. There's 23 different individual pieces that I need to produce for the game to be complete. In order for us to start marketing the game, I have to do 16. The deal that I worked out with them is I'm going to get a percentage cut of the gross of the Kickstarter campaign after it's done. So that is so speaking of what we were just talking about, that's another way for you to circumvent art costs. If you already have that implanted audience, this isn't for people who are first time creators. This is for people who have established brands or publishing companies. But if you need a way to get around that upfront art cost where you just don't have the liquidity to put cash on the table and get an artist to pump out stuff before you go to Kickstarter, that's a structure of a deal you can work out. Or you can give people a cut of equity if you're going to be an actual legit publishing company with a forecasted game plan of more releases coming down the road, right? These are different things you can do. But as a freelancer, what I do is I look at everything. If we're not doing one of those deals I just described, I usually give them a flat rate for the entire thing. and then we negotiate that rate based on the workflow. I usually tell them that if there's any one piece that gets revised, everything's going to go through 2 waves of revision. So I'm going to send them a rough. I'm going to send them an inked before colors for a last chance, a last look before it goes to finals, and then it goes to finals. If something happens after finals, we're like, oops, blah, 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 we got to change something, I add more money. Because I can't just, trying to row against the current with something, especially when you have this giant workload, it not only is it more time, it's mentally frustrating for an artist who is putting all this time into getting something that is final and finished to then have to do another round of revisions, even something small like go back into the file, isolate a layer, and change the hair color and eye color of this one character. Fine. Okay. But we could have had that figured out before I even started. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff, I'll just tack on a little bit more. So I tell them that there's a little bit of flexibility, but the flat rate is this amount. And then once they agree to it, we'll sign some stuff. And then I ask for 50 up front. I ask for half of that amount up front. If they don't like that deal, if they don't want to do a big lump sum or half of that lump sum at the onset because they just want to see how things go, then we parse it out. So I did some work for an indie publisher called Short Hop Games. A really good friend of mine, Eric Geller, who's a creator and soon to be publisher. He's going to be headed to Kickstarter soon, I think by the end of this year. He initially hired me to do like some character design and stuff for his game Quests and Cannons. And he was still sort of like dipping his feet into the water as far as who he was going to go with on a permanent basis or what stable of artists he was going to go with. So some games do that, right? Instead of leaning on one person to do the entire game, they get like 2 or 3 artists that kind of have a similar style, or or a group of artists with a passing similar style, and they farm out projects to the 3 of them or the 2 of them, right? So for us, it was, I signed some stuff that said he owns the IP, and we workshopped some stuff. We did an online meeting with him and his wife. I felt good about it. I created 3 pieces for them. They didn't end up going with me. Not a big deal. Each of those were, I think, like 150 or 200 a piece.
Okay.
That's just me. That's just me, though. I could see an artist with a lot more notoriety. Like the name of the artist escapes me, but like if you were to commission the guy who did Root, right? That guy for a character design would probably want way more than me because he can do that. You know what I mean? It's not just about like the actual tangible item or the visual asset that you're receiving. It's also about the notoriety and the availability of the artist doing the work. Because for me, in a year, if Token Tears is doing really well, and I have a creator or a publishing company who really, really, really wants me, and I'm busy running my own company, and I could really give a crap about working on their project, but they really want me, that price will scale to where they'll get me eventually. I mean, unless I'm doing so well that I can seriously just be like, red light, no thank you. But I doubt that. So, it's the same thing with all stuff with visual art, and I think with design, it's if you can prove that you can meet deadline and you can turn over quality work. I mean, there's millions of competent artists who are good, who are objectively good. Some of their problems and the reason they don't see like success, and I'm air quoting that if anybody is just listening, success in the art world is like very, very subjective, is that they can't deliver on time, or they're kind of wishy-washy, or they're really bad at communication, or it's not about their talent. Like they can produce and their stuff is awesome. But if you can't meet that deadline, if you can't communicate productively, take feedback with, let that stuff kind of roll off your back and just keep moving forward. I mean, these are all things that can inform your quote unquote success in doing freelance art.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the interview. It was great. I hope your Kickstarter goes extremely well and we get to see more of your product out there. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks. See ya.